There are moments in life that carve themselves into the mind, wounds that never heal, memories that never fade. Some encounters are so chilling, so disturbingly real, that even years later, they linger like a shadow in the corner of your vision. This is one such story. An encounter so horrifying that even now, as I relive it, my skin crawls and my breath turns shallow. It happened over a decade ago, yet the memory remains as fresh as if it happened last night. I was driving home after a grueling shift at work, utterly drained. It was around 2:30 a.m. The world outside was silent, abandoned. A thick fog clung to the road like something alive, twisting and shifting under my high beams. I took a shortcut through an old highway, a stretch of road so isolated it felt like I was driving through a void. No streetlights, no houses, just an endless tunnel of trees, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. Then I saw him. A man. He stood motionless at the side of the road, his body draped in filthy, tattered clothes. His head was tilted downward, yet somehow I knew he was watching me. Every instinct screamed at me to keep driving. Ignore him. Don't stop. But then I noticed something. He had no shoes. His arms hung limply, unnaturally, as if the bones inside were wrong. And his skin, it was pale, stretched tight over his face like a corpse left in the cold for too long. I should have driven on. I should have listened to the primal fear slithering up my spine. But I didn't. I slowed down. I still hate myself for it. I stopped the car 20 feet away. The beams of my headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating his face in full. His lips were cracked, split open like something had chewed on them. His mouth hung slightly ajar, as if he wanted to speak, but had forgotten how. Then he moved. A single step forward. A wave of nausea hit me like a punch to the gut. The air changed, grew heavy, suffocating. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. My fingers dug into the steering wheel, my foot hovering over the gas pedal. But I was frozen, paralyzed by an instinct older than reason. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a human smile. It was too wide, too sharp, too knowing. He knew something I didn't. The moment shattered. My body obeyed before my brain could. I slammed my foot onto the accelerator. The tires shrieked as the car tore forward, gravel spitting in my wake. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might burst. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. He was gone. Not running, not walking. Just gone. A breath of relief barely left my lips before I heard it. A whisper. So close, so quiet, yet it stabbed through my mind like a blade. You shouldn't have stopped. The voice came from the back seat. My stomach dropped into a pit of ice. I refused to turn around. If I looked, I would see it, and if I saw it, God help me. The whisper came again. You shouldn't have stopped. Colder now, closer. The temperature in the car plummeted. A damp, rotting smell curled around me. I felt it then, breath against my ear. My body acted on pure terror. I swerved off the road, tires skidding in the dirt, the car nearly slamming into a tree. I didn't think, I just moved. The second the car stopped, I threw open the door and stumbled out, falling to my hands and knees on the asphalt. My breaths came in ragged gasps. Silence. No footsteps, no whispers, just the distant rustling of the trees and the hum of my idling engine. Shaking, I forced myself to look back. The back seat was empty. But then, movement, not inside the car. From the woods. A shape, standing just beyond the trees. Watching, waiting. I didn't wait to see what it would do. I leapt back into the car, slammed the doors, and floored it. The road blurred beneath me as I tore through the night, my mind screaming, my heart threatening to stop altogether. I didn't stop until I reached my house. I locked the doors, checked every room, every closet, every shadow. I sat awake for hours, my skin crawling, my mind replaying every second. And then, just as exhaustion began to claim me, just as my eyelids drooped, a whisper right beside my ear. You shouldn't have stopped. I never drove that road again. Some things in this world don't belong here. Some things are never meant to be seen. Maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was something worse. But one thing is certain. I should never have stopped. Some nightmares don't end when you wake up. They seep into your reality, staining it like ink on fragile paper. I never thought I would survive to tell this story, and some nights I wish I hadn't, because now I know the truth. Something watches us in the places we think are safe. and once it finds you, it never truly leaves. I was 21 when I moved into my first apartment, a tiny, outdated one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. I had worked myself to exhaustion, saving every penny from my job at a rundown coffee shop just to afford it. It wasn't much, peeling wallpaper, flickering lights, creaky pipes, but it was mine, my freedom. At first, everything seemed normal. The usual sounds of an old building settling at night, the occasional flicker of lights, which I blamed on faulty wiring. But by the third week, I started noticing it. It began with the feeling of being watched, an oppressive weight in the air, like unseen eyes pressing against my skin. Then, one night, I woke up gasping for breath, my chest crushed by something invisible. My pulse thundered as I scanned the darkness until I saw it. A shadow in the corner. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the tricks of a sleep-deprived mind. I blinked rapidly, expecting it to disappear, but it didn't. It stood there, still and silent, and it was watching me. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed. The room felt heavier, suffocating. I wanted to scream, to run, but all I could do was stare as the shadow loomed in the corner, waiting. Then, without a sound, it melted into the darkness. I told myself it was sleep paralysis, a bad dream. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The apartment changed after that night. The shadows in the corners seemed darker, deeper. Objects moved from where I left them. My television flicked on by itself at ungodly hours, static hissing through the speakers. And then, the whispering started. At first, it was a faint murmur in the walls. A trick of my tired brain, I told myself. But soon, the voices grew louder. They weren't coming from the walls anymore. They were in my room. Every night, I lay frozen in my bed, listening to the whispers swirl around me, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. And then, one night, I woke up to my closet door wide open. I always kept it shut. My breath hitched, a cold sweat breaking over my skin. I grabbed my phone, the weak glow of the screen barely cutting through the darkness. My eyes darted to the closet, and that's when I saw it. The shadow wasn't in the corner this time. It was standing beside my bed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to move, to run, but I was frozen in terror. Then, just as my lips parted to scream, my bedside lamp flickered on, and the shadow was gone. But it left something behind. A deep, jagged scratch in the wooden floor beside my bed. Long, uneven grooves as if something had dragged its nails across the floorboards. I stopped sleeping after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it watching, waiting. My body ached from exhaustion, my mind unraveling at the seams. Desperate for validation, I told my best friend Sarah. She laughed. "It's just stress," she said. "You're overthinking it." She didn't believe me. Until she stayed the night. I woke up to her screams. She thrashed violently in my bed, eyes wide, mouth twisted in a silent shriek. I lunged for her, shaking her shoulders until her breathing slowed. Tears streaked her face as she clung to me, her body trembling. "I saw it," she whispered. "It was standing over you." That was the final straw. I packed whatever I could carry and called my parents, begging to come home. They didn't ask questions. Maybe they heard something in my voice, something raw and broken. But before I could leave, I had to spend one last night in that cursed apartment. I sat on my bed, every light in the apartment turned on, my back pressed to the wall. The silence was unbearable. The shadows felt like they were watching. The air was thick, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. And then, at 3:14 a.m., my bedroom door creaked open. Slowly, painfully. I held my breath, my pulse hammering in my skull. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then went out. And that's when I saw it. The shadow moved toward me, slow, deliberate. But this time it had a face, not human. Its skin was stretched too thin, its mouth a gaping, jagged wound that twisted into a grin. Hollow, black eyes locked onto mine, empty yet filled with something ancient, something hungry. I couldn't move. It loomed closer, its presence suffocating, pressing the air from my lungs. And then in a voice like a chorus of rotting whispers, it spoke. "You were never alone." The paralysis shattered. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys or unlocking my door. I only remember the sheer animalistic terror clawing at my spine as I fled into the hallway. The second I stepped outside, the weight lifted. The air felt normal again. But as I turned back one last time, it was there, standing in the doorway, watching me, waiting. I never returned. I broke my lease, left everything behind. My parents never asked for details, and I never gave them. But sometimes, even now, I feel it, watching from the corner of my room, hiding in the darkness just beyond my vision. And if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and feel eyes on you, don't look, because if you do, you might see something that never stops watching. It was a day like any other. My younger sister and I had just wrapped up our weekly visit to our grandmother's place, a sprawling rural condo complex that always felt eerily quiet, like a place forgotten by time. The sun hung low in the sky, stretching shadows across the pavement as we finished tidying up. Grandma's health had been failing for years, and each visit weighed heavier than the last. We never said it out loud, but we both knew these visits were numbered. I had parked my car as close to Grandma's unit as possible, in an unmarked lot with no designated spaces, just rows of asphalt and crumbling concrete stairs leading to different buildings. The place had a strange layout, winding driveways that looped around aimlessly. It was easy to get turned around. Still, everything about that day seemed normal, at least until she arrived. We had just settled into my car, ready to leave, when a gray SUV pulled up and stopped directly behind us, blocking me in. My hands instinctively tightened around the steering wheel. The driver, a middle-aged woman with messy blonde hair and hollow-looking eyes, stepped out. There was something off about her from the start. Her movements were hurried but not quite natural, like she was performing an act she hadn't rehearsed well enough. "I'm so sorry for blocking you in," she called out, her voice breathy, almost too friendly. "I just need to unload some groceries. I'll be quick, I promise." I glanced at my sister, a tight frown forming on my face. The woman had an apologetic smile, but something in her eyes didn't match it. We told her it was fine. We weren't in a hurry. She nodded gratefully, popped open the SUV's trunk, and pulled out two heavy-looking bags. But instead of heading toward the nearest set of stairs, just a few feet away, she walked across the lot, far away from the logical destination. My stomach twisted. "Why is she walking all the way over there?" I murmured to my sister. She barely looked up from her phone. Maybe she's visiting someone on that side. But the unease gnawed at me. The woman made trip after trip, each time walking further from her car, as if she were deliberately stretching out the process. 5 trips. 6. 7. She wasn't just unloading groceries. She was stalling, watching. The air in the car grew heavy, oppressive. My sister remained oblivious, scrolling aimlessly, but I couldn't take my eyes off the woman. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she climbed back into the SUV. My pulse quickened as I started my engine, waiting for her to move first. As soon as she pulled away, I followed. The complex was typically dead silent, save for the distant sound of children playing. The winding roads, riddled with speed bumps and blind turns, forced us to drive slowly. I kept my eyes on the SUV, watching as it neared the exit. Then, just before the final turn, she disappeared. Not just out of sight, vanished. I pressed harder on the gas, scanning the road. There were no turnoffs, no side streets she could have ducked into, just an empty stretch of pavement leading to the main road. "Where did she go?" I whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "Maybe she turned somewhere," my sister offered, but her voice had lost its dismissive tone. She was looking now too. There was nowhere to turn. My own voice sounded distant, numb. A sickening chill crawled up my spine. That night I couldn't sleep. The encounter looped in my mind, each strange detail knitting together into something deeply wrong. Then, just as I was beginning to drift off, I heard it. A soft tapping. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The wind? A tree branch? Tap, tap, tap. No, it was deliberate. I forced myself up, heart pounding, as I tiptoed to the window. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside. The street below was bathed in moonlight, casting deep, twisted shadows. Nothing looked out of place, until I saw the figure standing by my car. A woman, motionless, staring. The breath left my lungs in a sharp gasp. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone, but when I looked back, she was gone. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream, a trick of exhaustion and paranoia. But just as I was about to climb into my car, I noticed something. The driver's side door was slightly open. My hands went cold. I checked inside. Nothing seemed missing, but something was different. Off. Then I saw it. A small, crumpled note wedged between the seat and the door. My fingers felt numb as I unfolded it. "I'm always watching. You shouldn't have seen me." My stomach turned to ice. I spun around, scanning the complex, but everything was still, normal, ordinary. For days, I felt the weight of invisible eyes on me. My sister insisted I was imagining things, but I knew better. Then one night, I saw the SUV again, parked just beyond the streetlights, its engine humming softly. A cold realization settled over me. She hadn't just vanished that day. She had been waiting, watching. A shadow moved in the driver's seat. The window rolled down slightly. Then, in that same breathy, unnatural voice, "Why are you running?" I turned and bolted for my house. I barely made it inside before the SUV's tires screeched against the pavement. I heard the engine revving, but I didn't dare look outside.